thank you very much. Okay, in advance, very good morning, dear college. I want to offer a very special thank you to the organizers of this great event. I'm going to turn off my camera because to avoid some technical problems that I wanted to have in this presentation. Okay, the title of this presentation is Functional Medicine and the Agronomic Engineer. What it is and how to influence in a society after a pandemic. My name is Edgar Omar Rueda Puente. This presentation is in honor of my father Gilberto Rueda de León. As an introduction, I can tell you that food production worldwide is one of the greatest challenges for achieving various goals, including the supply of plant-based foods based on the principles of sustainability, health, quality, and food safety. In the agri-food sector, the main agent is the agricultural engineer, who is the professional with knowledge and expertise in agri-food systems. However, the economic interest involved in food production often lead to failure to meet sustainability criteria, resulting in the production of food with high pesticides content and poisoning the population that consumes. This same phenomenon can be seen in conventional human medicines, where the pharmaceutical sector, together with human medicine professionals, has become exhausted. That is, instead of having those opportunities to connect with other individuals and do something for someone else, it has really been promoted more for economic interest and not for the benefit of the patients. The alternative to this condition, which exists in both sectors, agriculture and human medicines, is to reduce the use of pesticides in agriculture, bringing us as close as possible to sustainability and organic agriculture. In human medicines, it is of utmost importance to implement the principles of functional medicines in our lives, which is the process where the professional truly integrates with the patients. Functional medicines is medicines that doesn't focus on the disease itself, but rather on the individual. It doesn't cure disease, but rather creates health. And by redirecting the way we produce food and take care of our health, we can give our lives a better meaning. That is why I am grateful for this opportunity to give this keynote address at this great event. An event that unites the global scientific community where science meets wisdom. The conference title is The Agronomical Engineer and Functional Medicines, What It Is and How to Influence a Healthier Society and Emerging from a Pandemic. It is a conference enriched with the principles of Dr. Alexander Krohaman, a world-renowned expert in functional medicines. It is important to give credit to this entire group of collaborators who play an important role in the expansion of knowledge and technology transfer. They work in these international institutions. In this image, we can see their photos of each of them, so around 40 members, and among which some of them are no longer among us physically. We have and show our gratitude and special affection. All the information that I will be expressing for you in verbal form is contained in the following works. For example, you are going to see this book, Desalinity, a Problem or an Option to the Agriculture Sector. Other book is The Plant Growth Promoting Bacteria. The other is The Importance of Sustainability for Community Development, Organic Agriculture, and Current Issues. This is another, the Allophytes into the Agriculture of Dry Arid Zones. As a first approximation, I will be addressing where we are located and the areas that we study. Some edaphoclimatic factors, the importance of indigenous communities, their knowledge, some agrobiotechnological experiences, and finally, I will talk about how the agronomist plays an important role as a cultural editor in a society, seeking to influence people longevity. On this same slide, we can see the 10 main deserts in the world. And we can see how in the northwest of a Mexican country, which is bordering the United States, there is one that is the Sonora Desert. In this one of Sonora Desert is one of the largest deserts in the world, located in two states of Mexico country. This state is Sonora and Baja California, bordering the state of Arizona in the United States. It has approximately an area of 4,000 square kilometers, where in the center of these deserts there is an area of craters where there are mainly four. In the northwest of Mexico, where the Sonora Desert is located, there are communities that live under these conditions. We are talking about around 2.5 million. When we are in the area of craters and we are into of these craters, we are talking about a temperature close to 60 or 62 degrees Celsius. Other characteristics that this crater has is soils very poor in organic matter and high salinity in the soil, which it is the half of seawater. Remember that seawater has 30 to 35 grams per liter of water. So the quantities of salts into the soil of the craters is 15 until to 18 or 20 grams per kilogram of soils. These temperatures close to 60 degrees Celsius and salinity conditions promote special vegetation and microorganisms with tolerance to salinity and temperature. It is important to note that in this type of environment, the radiation is very high in certain seasons of the year. We reach up to 3,000 lux per square meter. This means 300 spotlights of 100 watts per square meter. A light intensity that doesn't weaken waste in the generation of clean or renewable energy. Then, taking into account the high temperatures, intense solar radiation, low content of organic matter, and high concentration of the salts, the question arises, how does vegetation exist? Considering above mentioned, we can notice that in these craters there is a little vegetation that thrives in these extreme conditions. But precisely these types of conditions are what open up a broader panorama for us to be able to obtain microorganisms associated with the roots of the few plants, be able to identify them and see the possibility to produce biofertilizers that are used in the deserts of the world and thus promote agriculture that generates human food, animal fodder, and other agroindustrial activities. This is an appreciation of the American continent where we can visualize other deserts in Latin America. The group or team of researchers to which I belong has a premise that consists of the group of research wants to solve global problems together with the generation of knowledge, involving ourselves mainly in those demands that are requested at an international level. Some of them are what we can see below. Something that is important to emphasize is that we don't solve problems. We generate alternative solutions that together with other groups we can solve something. It's important that another big problems that we have is the zoonotic diseases. In this sense, new generations play an important role in joining as long as there is an application in society. Students should think about bringing science from the lab to the job market. This is to provide basic and technology knowledge tools for solving global problems, including agri-food and environmental problems. One of the main activities we develop is bioprospecting, which it is an alternative in arid deserts in search of a biomass, for example, vegetative materials, microorganisms, animal, insects, because one goal that we have is to identify halotolerance, thermotolerance, and the possibility of involving them in the productive sector. In the case of vegetables, as crops with agroindustrial potential. On this slide, we can see the different areas of application that the group of researchers develop, both at the level of plants and at the level of microorganisms. At the level plants, we can see how we want to detect the importance to human food, further reforestation and afforestation, soil bioremediation, biofuel, industry plant extracts, for example. And considering the microorganisms, we are finding the halotolerance and thermotolerance to produce biofertilizer. We are studying how we can slope release, applying for many crops, and the other activities that we are doing. We currently have an international project where we all collaborate, and it has been submitted to international organizations. The motto we use is how much progress has been made in alleviating hunger and malnutrition on a global scale. We are still far from having a world in which the entire population is free from hunger. The global project is named Feeding the Mind to Fight Hunger. And in all bioprospecting, we use biotechnology, which it is depending on the area of application, has a different color. Of course, we are using the basic concepts of why we work in some lines of research. These concepts is autoconservation, auto-regulation, and the capacity of to auto-perpetuations, being shapes strategies to sustain our species. On this slide, we can see how the knowledge generated help us to identify the relative risk of mortality from the foods that we consume and the average relative environmental impact. The current pandemic has led the population to be more sensitive and aware of the quality of the food they consume, which is why different professions must take this into account. Let's remember that one of the main strategies we want is self-preservation or staying in this beautiful life. That is why any action we take for ourselves will not be enough, sufficient, but inclusive. Each action that we also see in each of the sectors of a society is very important to take into account, which is why we will see the next video below. I'm going to turn on this video.
Across the Sea of Cortez from Mexico's Baja California is the stark coastline of the Sonoran Desert. For centuries, part of this coast has been the home of a small Indian nation. These are the Comcaac. Much of the world knows them as the Seri. There have never been very many of them. Today there are about 1,000, and they live on what may seem like the bleakest of coastal deserts. Until you see how the Seri take care of their part of it, their green estuaries. The Seri are famous among environmentalists as a people who have mastered their desert, know all the little ticking details of living with and preserving their few plants and animals and sea creatures. They sing of this. Theirs is a poetry of the sea and earth. The Seri are known for small wood and stone carvings and reed baskets, and providing tour guides for the coast and offshore islands. What else could they do here? Who in this modern world might need and value their cultural expertise with plants and animals of the coastal desert? Just to the south of the Seri nation is the beginning of another extraordinary place, but a very different one. Climaxing 40 years of research.
Okay, this video is only because I want to show you how we are working with many native people. For us, it's very important to know their knowledge, their experiences, and yes, it is true that we have been working with some plants, two of which are representative worldwide. For example, Salicornia virgelovi as a new alternative as a crops, and Cannabis sativa, considering the many biometabolites very important for the health human. This is another video considering our all activities that we do with many researchers in many countries. I don't know if all the attendees understand Spanish. I'm going to present this video.
Que resulta de la convivencia sana entre el hombre y la naturaleza.
This is a language native of the communities indigenous. Fighting the desert. Fighting the desert.
Si alguien conoce el desierto y sus misterios, el mar y sus secretos, el volcán y su grandeza, son los seris, los últimos habitantes de las tierras más áridas del estado de Sonora y guardianes por tradición de su historia e identidad.
Yo creo que debemos de respetarlos en primer lugar, de imitarlos en su forma de proteger y de estar en contacto con la naturaleza.
Entendiendo la filosofía de los seris, un grupo de investigadores de la Universidad de Sonora estudian los mares y los desiertos para mejorar los cultivos y la alimentación humana.
Que estamos enfocados a conocer cuál es la biodiversidad de esos que están presentes en los desiertos del mundo. Recordemos que
For us, it's very important to work that to use the seawater, because the deserts, another goals, another objective that we have is how we can green in the deserts, and how we can produce many agroindustrial crops using the seawater.
De estas calabazas gigantes. Esto es solo una muestra de lo que estos campos de cultivo con agua de mar pueden producir. Aquí están estos chiles serranos ricos en una mayor cantidad de vitamina A, muy bueno para la vista. En el caso de la calabaza, la vitamina E, que ayuda al mejoramiento de la piel. O en el caso, por ejemplo, del ajo, que ayuda como antibiótico natural para el organismo, para el estómago. Esto y más es lo que se puede producir aquí en estos campos de experimentación, campos de cultivo de la Universidad de Sonora.
El doctor Edgar Omar Rueda ha estudiado otra planta nativa sagrada para los seres. Es la Salicornia bigelovi. Crece en la zona costera del desierto sonorense. Tiene una alta tolerancia a la salinidad y un valor nutricional importante. El aceite que produce esta planta se puede utilizar como combustible. Un combustible tan potente que podría generar una energía similar a la turbocina usada en los aviones, pero 80% más limpio.
estamos dando ese empuje de cómo de utilizar agua de...
With many many plants of the desert, from the deserts, it's very important to know how we can use it.
En el sur de África,
In Africa,
con
we are
la
working,
participación
feeding,
de otros organismos internacionales para proveer de alimento a
feeding native
ciertas
people.
comunidades de bajos recursos.
También están colaborando en programas de reverdecimiento de desiertos en Irán y Chile.
Ahí tenemos la colaboración con el gobierno iraní para enverdecer un alto porcentaje de su desierto.
The green in the deserts is very important for us because the 85% of agri-food is from the arid zones. These all our activities are into of a model of plant microorganisms interaction in arid, coastal, and or desert environmentals. Of course, we have a technical collaboration in the production of halophytes and their interaction with plant growth promoting microorganisms for the production of food, biofuels, and afforestation. Before delving into functional medicines, it is important to consider a few aspects that may cause ant-beats in some human health professionals and the pharmaceutical sector. For the conventional world or the world traditional medicines, those of us who are in communion with functional medicines are disagreeing or don't share the vision of health. And a question arises here: how do you deal with people who have these ways of seeing that are so fixed, so square, so ingrained that they are simply not open to considering that maybe there are other options to take care of our health. Let's see. Let's see first of all, life is not a popularity contest. We are not in this to see who believe us, who in some way is going to support or applaud us for what we do. We believe that the most concrete way to answer this question we pose is with disbelief. And why we disbelieve? Because we don't consider ourselves an exceptional individual in this world, but someone who has or we have the ability to at least question. We believe that everyone should have the ability to question, and what I do understand is how more of my college have not questioned what is happening with medicines. Nowadays, medicines and the way in which we are living medicines, the way in which medicines is being practiced is terrible, and I cannot understand that most doctors don't even open their eyes to manifest. Beyond the fact that this is a way of life, it is a profession that we eat from this, and we understand that it has to do with economic remuneration. It is clear to us, okay? But beyond this, the profession like that of the agricultural engineer is a wonder because of the opportunity it gives you to connect with other individuals. To do something for someone else, we think that this is one of the most wonderful things, and conventional medicines or the model that we have today doesn't help in this sense. It is a model that is very worn up and really only has a economic interest and not the benefit of the patients. Reconsidering when people are not willing to change, close in their beliefs or in their mental models. What is the attitude that we should take, and how do we consider we should handle a situation in which there is simply no way to negotiate? We believe that there are two conventional paths. Or I am going to get into a confrontation. That is, we are going to have a confrontation no matter what the cost, and it doesn't matter who comes out scratch. And two, that is the other conventional way, is that in order to wear myself out, I better turn it around and not get involved in this. And we believe that both are a mistake. We have to understand that no one is the owner of the truth. Everyone is right in certain things, and we are wrong in many others. And I think that the logical thing is to understand that the other person also has the right to express themselves. And I think that is where we have to look for points of communion. Here I'm going to talk about an example that seems to me which is very interesting and could help us a little in that sense. Um, I have a question for you. Do we remember the conflict in Ireland, that of Northern Ireland and Southern Ireland? 30 years of war over a religious issues where the United States finally entered halfway since they could not get anywhere. it wasn't until a North American senator who was leading this conversation happened to have a dinner where to he make their points. He promotes a dinner alternating a representative from Northern Ireland with one from Southern Ireland at the table. Yes, the rule was you couldn't talk about anything that had to do with the conflict or with business or war. You only had to talk about personal issues, and the moment people started talking about personal issues, about their children, about hobbies, about the things in life that gives them meaning, the conflict was resolved. And in this sense, we all have points in common. We just have to be willing to look for them, and you cannot judge a priori. You have to have the ability to understand. I insisted normally you don't have the word who and neither does the other. I have another example. Let's go to biology and let's see think in terms of genetic. Do you know what percentage of genetics all human beings share? It's practically everything. It is 99.9%. And this difference are that 1.1% point. That 1% point is responsible for whether you are taller or shorter, if you are blonde or dark skinned, if you have a black skin or you are Asian or you are white. Whatever you want, that 1% point is the determining factor in why we discriminate against each other, that we kill each other, and that this world has no harmony. It is ridiculous. In the interpersonal relationships, the different professions guide us, among other things, to know ourselves. Our body is an inexhaustible universe, and it is wonderful. It is incredible that we function the way we function. However, it is sad to see or notice very surreal talks or conversations in which extremely crude topics are touched on in a trivial, banal way. And one of them is medicines, where professionals make jokes about their patients and their health conditions. But the question arises, how favorable is the philosophy that these professionals have to detach themselves from the patient's situation? To be able to avoid stress or absorb suffering of loss if a patient is going to die? Really separate yourself and maintain objective is caring for a patient. The philosophy of functional medicines is the opposite. It is fired to guide and connect with patients. Within the philosophy of functional medicines, the doctor has to be very warm, because if he cannot feel the pain of others, you can't help him. When you have the opportunity to listen to obscene conversation from professionals about their experience in a vain way, the way is which the professionals behaves is nothing more than a product of cynicism about everything that has happened and all the wear and degradation that has been experienced. The profession of the human doctor is questioned. Decades ago, many doctors were the confident. They were the guide of the family. The doctor didn't have historical elements of these patients, such as those that can currently be obtained. Before, the doctor could do for a patient, they couldn't not cure, but they could always help. They could be there. And this is what has been lost. There is no longer that connection between patients and professional. Now, the patient is seen as a number, as a sign of pesos, as an account from in an insurance company, and that connectivity has been lost. It is important that the professional does fall into the situation of becoming a participant is that synonyms. They must reconcile their feeling and position. Also, the authorities of a country must return to how a system in which it has its professionals can overwhelm, stress, and affect the work of a professional. There are also factors that favor having certain behaviors in our practical life. Some professionals are already parents of family that include a wife and children and must be supported. Therefore, when one wants a medical professional to transform their traditional way of acting to that of functional medicines, these aspects must be evaluated because they must fulfill responsibilities. Notwithstanding the above, the more professionals who join a new way of treating patients, the faster we will achieve the objectives of functional medicines. And here innovation will play an important role since bringing the knowledge that you have in one area of life to another area, this is innovation. It is essential to understand that medicine functional ones regarding the health industry and business is the benefit of the patients and the doctor and society in general, without eliminating productivity as a company from the pharmaceutical industry. Something important to take away is that the professional must confront with their finitude to the extent that we are aware that we are not going to be here forever. That is when we give meaning to our lives. How functional medicines emerged? There is an organizations that offer medical service with a philosophy of greater care toward patients, and one of them is anti-aging medicines or regenerative medicines. However, when you get into these organizations, they are commercial that what they proclaim. Another is the Institute of Functional Medicines. And based on the above, the questions that arise are: what do we mean by commercial? What is the difference between functional medicines and anti-aging medicines, since some interested parties use them as synonyms? To the first questions, what do we mean when we indicate that they are commercial? When you see how the organizations like the American Academic are functioning today, where they really give too much weight to many things that are much more superficial cosmetics. You realize these mercantilisms because they have given beauty a very high connotation in the acceptance of a person in a society. The following example is difficult to understand. When a person enters an operating room to have plastic surgery, but their body is completely healthy. When topics are discussed in confidence between professionals, these types of interventions put the patients at risk. Since when receiving anesthesia, there are many situations that may not necessarily go in the optimal way and may have a problems. From there, it is difficult to understand that there are two important issues that conflict: the emotional issues and the issues of self-confidence. In relation to the emotional, there is the justification that people can undergo plastic surgery because they need that transformation and that security that can open very open paths in their life. However, it is important to note that these insecurities put you at mortal risks. And therein lies the importance of working on emotional security in people from an early age, since the beauty of the interior is priceless. And considering the first question, when you go to those conferences promoting the transformation of superficial age, you will realize that probably 90% of it is a question totally and absolutely that appeals to the ego of the either the patients of the doctor. According to the second question that indicates what is the difference between functional medicines and anti-aging medicines, since some interested parties use them as synonyms? The answer in this sense is important to separate the term from medicines to anti-aging, and now to comment that the correct term is successful again. From here we are going to start by first understand that every day, every moment of the day, we are againing. And that is natural. That is life, okay? No one knows how long we are going to live, but what we do have a participation in is how we want to live it. So, it doesn't matter if I'm going to live to be 18, I'm going to live to be 19, or I'm going to live to be 100, but I don't want to choose what can I do, and that is within my capabilities to know how I want to live towards these years. That is why the term again begin to be used in this very ambiguous way. On that one hand, it began with this whole topic of stem cells, and that has been one of the extraordinary applications. However, it is important to emphasize that not all advances are to be used indiscriminately throughout the world. In other words, not everyone has to go through the same process. It is a bit like a plastic surgery. With all due respect to everything I just said about obtaining emotional security, okay? Now I understand the role of plastic surgery, but not everyone has the same psychonomic characteristic for the surgeon to do the same procedure with the same results of all people. One can see them people at a given time and you say, oh, this one was operated with this on this with this one. And why it is appreciated? Because it didn't respect individuality. The doctor simply took away their individuality, and precisely this activity is very common in anti-aging medicine. So, how is functional medicine described? Functional medicine is the process where the human medicine professional truly integrates with the patient. It doesn't focus on the diseases but focuses on the individual. In other words, you can have the same conditions in 10 different people, and it turns out that there are really 10 different diseases. Although it is the same disease, but each individual is different in many areas. Dear organizers, members of the organization's team, how I am in the time. I can turn off my presentation if you wish. Could you mind answering me my question? Do we have a good time or close my presentation? Okay, perfect. Functional medicine doesn't focus on disease. It focuses on the individual. Another very important difference is that it recognizes biochemical and genetic individuality. It recognizes the issues of organic reserves. What does this mean about reserves? In other words, you don't want to address just an immediate problem. You want to make the body function much more adequately so that it has greater capacity in all aspects. Not only physically, but also mental, emotional, and that also contributes, of course, to that longevity. So there are many differences in that sense, and of course, very important, functional medicines doesn't treat disease, it creates health. It has much more of a preventive approach, which are actions that conventional medicines don't do. Okay, I'm going to stop my share. I want to give you my thanks. I am thankfully with many members of this that are included in my presentation.